Hey everybody, back here for another great conversation. Been looking forward to this one, particularly with Dan Smith. Dan, I worked with how many years ago now? I'm not too sure, but it's quite a few, 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that, Dan.
Yeah, I think it seems a long time ago now, my friend. Seems a long time ago.
Absolutely. And it seems quite long ago because of the amount of things we get on with and we do and we develop and we progress, and it always seems like a lot of time has passed when we look back and think of the amount of things that we've achieved. But I come across Dan when I was doing some mentoring. Obviously Dan was mentoring me through M10, which is a fantastic facility up in Nottingham. Met Dan then with and a group. The whole ethos up there was fantastic. I met some great coaches who opened my idea of the possibilities of the how you could change a person's life. We're not just talking here about dropping body fat. We were talking about, these guys up at M10 were really making huge changes to people's lives. And it was just so inspiring. And this really kicked me off in my career. At the time, I had a very small gym space down in Coventry, but just being around the guys up there and around Dan just really opened up my eyes and my thought process of what could be achieved and the impact that you could have with people. So I'm very, very grateful to Dan for that. Dan, I wanted to send it over to you now. Just give people a little bit more context of where you're coming from, what you've done in the past and what you're currently doing now, buddy.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on. A bit of background for me. I've been in the industry circa 20 years now, so it's been a massive part of my life for a long period of time now. Obviously, I do a whole manner of different coaching, so from online coaching to one-to-one personal training. I do quite a lot of education as well. But yeah, for me, I think the most important thing and what gets me out of bed every day is the ability we have as coaches to, as you mentioned earlier, not just kind of create fantastic results and get life-changing results from an aesthetic standpoint, but it's also that ability to have such a profound impact on people's lives. And one of the key things that I always say in regards to what I do is I change lives, and it's making people achieve a level of results both from an aesthetics and a mental side that they didn't think they could previously achieve. I was just having a conversation with a client that I've just trained a second ago, and I was saying the mental aspect of what we try to do and the empowerment abilities of us as coaches is the thing that stands alone. I mean, everybody's heard of all the different diets that are out there where you can lose weight, but they've just not ever been able to be sustainable. So for me, it's how to empower someone's life outside of the gym. And finding what we're going to speak about today in regards to relative balance is the most important thing, as opposed to just how hard you train, which I know we're going to delve a little bit deeper into today. So yeah, I had quite an early passion for sport and kind of then found the personal training world or the health and fitness route kind of 20 years ago now. So, and it's just gone from strength to strength ever since, and the evolution of myself as a human, as well as being able to impart really good kind of things to the thousands of clients that I've worked with up to this point as well.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that really stands out for me in terms of when you're looking at coaches, is the ones that are most successful to me are the ones that are ready and willing to delve into their own progression outside of the gym. In the gym, having that idea of, an understanding, but outside of the gym and how to develop themselves as a person, because inevitably that just filters into everyone that they're around, their clients, their family, their friends, and you start to have that profound effect, don't you?
Because everybody has a story, right, John? And kind of I think the biggest thing for me is I've never been adverse to telling people my story, but the good, the bad, and the ugly. And this thing called life that we go through every single day is tough. It's tough to navigate, but I try to look at it with kind of my half glass full in regards to negative and bad things are going to happen. I use a phrase with a lot of my clients is everybody's going to fall off a proverbial horse. And that's inevitable. It's not falling off a horse that's the issue. It's what are you going to do to get back onto the saddle? How quickly can you get back into the saddle? And just becoming okay with perceived negativity and when bad things happen. And it's navigating a route forward from an individual specific standpoint that works for them. So the industry and kind of programs, nutrition, training is very subjective. One thing I'm very astute at and I like to do is it's marrying up, which again we're going to talk about in a little bit, is marrying the right program to the individual at hand. There's so many trainers that I work with and I mentor that kind of are trying to find the perfect solution for each individual. And for those listeners that listen to this, are trying to find what's perfect, going off the back of the internet, social media, of what they find, but it's ultimately understanding we are all individual entities, and the only thing that is for you is what's specific to you, marrying together quite a few different modalities as opposed to that one size fits all approach. And yeah, as we said, life itself is very difficult. We all have different responsibilities, but it's how you navigate them to best serve yourself that is going to be a precursor to outstanding results, again, both aesthetically, but that carries over into other aspects of your life. I mean, we were just speaking about a second ago, I think one of the biggest things for me was becoming a dad at such a young age and understanding I had another little life to protect, but also to inspire. My son turned 19 yesterday, and kind of when you have that effect, which a lot of people listening to this will have, families, friends, jobs that are taking up a lot of the time. So it's how do we then blend this thing called fitness into a plan that works for them, that doesn't take away from filling the proverbial personal and professional cups that people are going through. So yeah, I think it's difficult to navigate, but in life there is a lot of lessons that we need to take heed of, and just understand that everything isn't all sunshine and rainbows, and being okay with that. I work a lot with a lot of my clients about acceptance. Things are going to happen, road bumps are going to happen, but it's how we then navigate ourselves around and over those road bumps, and how we keep that trajectory of progression continuing to move forward.
Yeah, 100%, mate, 100%. One of the things I like to do when we start these conversations is to give people something to go away with straight off the bat. And I'm not saying these are quick fixes. They're certainly not quick fixes, because that's not what myself and you do. Certainly not. But I always like to give value wherever possible. So if you could give somebody who, bearing in mind, who has got a lot on their plate already, family, business, career, spinning at many plates, but they are aware of their health and well-being. They want to make sure that they are doing whatever they can possibly to improve it and do well with their health and fitness. Is there any 3 things that you would talk to people about initially that they could plug in with small amount of energy and the smallest amount of time being taken up?
For me, one of the biggest things is write lists. So again, I look at the body 2 prongs, so mental and physical. We often underestimate the physical capabilities of what we can do because there's a lot going on in here. As we said, family, life, work, training, trying to fit it all, it can be overwhelming. So overwhelm and procrastination are 2 of the biggest things that I found with my clients over time. So having a schedule for your day, like a lot of these people listening to this will have things put into their calendars and kind of meetings, all those sort of things. Do the same when you're trying to take control of your life. So your training, your nutrition, hydration, which is an important one, kind of write lists of what you've got to get in and schedule these things into your life, because once they become habits, it's a lot easier to navigate. The biggest thing I find with human beings is creating new habits and being able to kind of consistently achieve and sustain those habits. So for me, it's writing lists and schedule your day inclusive of your training, your food, your family time. And that seems quite controlling, but for a period of 3 months to start with, kind of, I find it just teaches that repetition that's required to make it autonomous. A lot of people struggle with autonomy because it's something new. And we as human beings, we don't like change. We're very bad at changing or kind of keeping consistent change. So to begin with, starting with lists and scheduling is super important. That would probably be my first one to make. Nice. To really substantiate the changes that you're trying to make. The second one from an internal standpoint is, you probably talk about this a lot, is drink more water. A lot of people that I speak to in day-to-day life, I say, oh, what can I do to lose this first 5 or 10 pounds? And the first thing I respond to is drink more water. From an energy perspective, it's going to make you feel better. Every one of the internal bodily systems from digestion to normal function of the human body requires hydration. And that's a key thing for me. If I can tell everybody in the world to do one thing better, it's to take in more water and good quality water to kind of make sure that they are able to function optimally. I talk a lot to my clients about optimizing all areas of your life, and kind of hydration is one of them. And then the third one is, I think it goes back to the point I said about kind of not falling off a horse and getting back on. It just be kinder to yourself in regards to, don't overestimate your expectations. Kind of when bad things do happen, try to understand that, right, this has happened. I can't fix what's happened. If you go out and have a really messy weekend, for instance, you consume far too much alcohol and a lot of beige food, that's okay. Being okay with bad things that happen is super important, because, as I said, if you can understand and you can get an explanation as to why it happened and what you could potentially do different, to me, that's progress. When a client comes in after a heavy week of alcohol and travel and those sort of things, and they've not, quote unquote, stuck to plan, or they're very downbeat and they allow it to kind of carry on in a negative trajectory. Whereas for me, it's kind of being okay with that happening, but trying to learn what they could do better and kind of how things could go a little bit different. We probably talk about it in a little bit. The biggest things for me with a lot of my clients is peer pressure. We live in a society now with a lot of social media, a lot of outside influences, and people initially, when they come to me, don't have the ability to say no and kind of set boundaries. Boundaries is something that I speak to people a lot about, both in personal, professional. People work too much. People spend so much time thinking about external factors, when ultimately, unless you're looking after yourself and you're setting boundaries for what's best for your life, that's going to drip into all those other areers. And exactly, I like to ask my clients to set boundaries in regards to, one, what you're capable of that runs in line with your highest values as well. So if one of your highest values is your children, and you agree to work 15 extra hours a week, that's not really buying into your kind of highest value, because your values are your children. So having that ability to set boundaries is probably the third one from the get-go, to allow us to create what I said in the first point, the element of consistency. And again, balance is one of those things that it probably isn't possible, but kind of understanding around perceived balance is important. So yes, setting boundaries would probably be the third one.
Yeah, I love that, because all those three are very empowering. They're very easy to implement. I mean, the third one also, it's, I love that, being more aware of what your values are. We all have them. We know them subconsciously, but it's always great to go back to them, I think, and be aware of them. So when you're put in those scenarios and you make poor decisions, if you were more aware of your values at the time, there's more likelihood that you're going to abstain from some of those poorer decisions, aren't you? I mean, this country, in terms of socializing, it's all around going to the pub, alcohol, food quality probably isn't the best all the time. And if your values aren't at the forefront of your mind, there's more likelihood you're gonna go with it, aren't you? You're just gonna fall into the trap.
100%. Well, if we look at values, if you again, from a personality standpoint, if you're an extrovert, one of your highest values will be social connection. It will be seeing your friends. It will be outside influences. So how do we then manage going to the pub with your need and desire as a kind of that ability to have that social connection? Well, you can still go to the pub. You can abstain from drink if you want to, even off the worst menu possible. Let's use McDonald's as an example. I mean, my son is 19. He likes to go to McDonald's. So am I just going to say to him, no, Tyler, I'm not going to McDonald's because I don't eat McDonald's. So I'll go to McDonald's and I'll eat. I'll have a grilled chicken wrap. So that's me not abstaining from time with Tyler, but it's also me implementing boundaries in regards to, I'm not going to have a Big Mac meal. I'm not going to wash it down with a McFlurry and 10 nuggets. So it's understanding that your values and what you do might be important to you, i.e. going to the pub, and that is okay. But the decisions you make from a boundaries perspective that will kind of alter the decisions you make at the pub. No one ever says don't go to the pub. If you want to drink, have a drink. but also kind of it's important to take control of your life and implement boundaries in the environments that you know have the ability and the potential to create a kind of negative spin on your end goal, for instance.
Yeah. Now, it's so great to hear, Dan, because I think people's perception when they're starting to try and implement, better changes with their nutrition, their training, their exercise, whatever it may be, they have this idea that I'm either on this journey or I'm off the journey. Yes. And I'm with you on this one. If you try and take that's going to last a short period of time. You're going to crack at some point if you just think you're going to take away everything that is in your life that you feel is going to be stopping you from making that progress. So I think for many people, whoever's listening, that is just so empowering for that individual to know that they can still live their life, but still grow as a person and still improve their health, improve their well-being, and not have this idea of like on or off the horse.
It's that all or nothing mentality, which is quite common with a lot of people, isn't it? And it's understanding. Yes, there does have to be some kind of some control. So it's not you can go to the pub every evening. There has to be some sort of kind of give back. But it's understanding that you can still go and enjoy a social night. But our goal as coaches is to allow the clients that are listening to understand what the compromise is. There has to be some sort of compromise. It's not a case of going to the pub and getting bladdered every night and you're going to get results. But again, marrying the expectation with reality is important. So many people will, as I said to you, right, I'm going to stick to plan for 12 weeks. Okay, they're diligent in regards to they get fantastic results. So all these 12-week transformations that we see. And then what happens at the end of the 12 weeks? They go back to living what we would described as a perceived normal, what's got them into the bad place in the inset. So for me, it's very much understanding that all or nothing mentality, which a lot of people listening to this, myself included, will have, but it's being able to control that and understand when we're all and we're never nothing, if that makes sense. So you can have periods where you are a lot more astute to task, and then there's going to be periods where you're not, but it's never going back to nothing. It's being all or something. So for me, it's finding that, as I said, quote unquote, balance of kind of understanding decisions that are made and how we navigate through those difficult decisions, which is the most important thing.
100%, mate. I mean, over just the last 5-10 minutes there, we've covered a hell of a lot of stuff in there that have just come out of those 3 things that we talked about implementing, which is awesome. The main body of this conversation, what I wanted to do, Dan, was to look at a specific area, as I like to do in these conversations. And what I wanted to look at today is looking at that busy, driven individual, has a family, has a career, spinning many, many plates, as we've said, and they're on a journey. They're implementing. Their health means something to them. They're very aware of it, and they also are aware of their actions then bleed into their immediate family, how they are perceived with their family. So it's very important to them. But here's the thing: how does that individual become consistent at doing, let's say, the training aspect? And we know very, very clearly the training aspect is one cog of many cogs that is going to be supporting someone to increased well-being, better health, whatever you want to call it. But let's take the training aspect at the moment, because when I'm talking to clients, and I'm sure you come across this as well, the biggest thing is consistency. How am I, with all this going on, am I able to be consistent at the gym? Because most likely they're going to they perceive going to the gym an hour and a half. They're slogging. They have to slog themselves in the gym and literally come out the gym sweating, unable to hardly move. And that is unsustainable. But that's a lot of people's perception of a training program, quote unquote. How can we help people that I've described to become more consistent and embed some sort of training methodology that is going to support them long term?
So for me, there's a couple of points that scream out there in regards to, we'll look at stress in a second, but from specifically the training program, it's understanding what do you have available. So a lot of going back to that all or nothing mentality, a friend and client of mine kind of created a thing, and a lot of you will have heard it in sport, called marginal gains. It was used with the Olympic cycling team back in the 2012 Olympics. And that's the thing that I refer to all the time with clients, because they are all or nothing. And we're not, every week with my clients, it's not trying to get 20 or 30% better. In the interim, it will be if they're really off a boil. But week on week, it's looking at marginal gains and what do you have available? If a client has a busy job and a family that's important to them, is it right to set the expectation to have to train or be in the gym for an hour and a half, 5 to 6 times a week? Absolutely not. So what are the things that we can do implement? It might be a case they get to the gym twice this week, which is fine. So what are they doing around the gym? They're eating well. They're going out for walks at weekend. Fingers crossed it's not raining. Walks at the weekend to kind of spend time with the family. So it's building in strategies around, as I've said to you, kind of a training and nutrition plan is very subjective to the individual and what they have available. And if someone hasn't got a lot of time, people buy into this whole social media fact of kind of, if you're not in the gym 6 hours a week, you're not going to get results. Yes, the more you can put into it, you will get more life-changing results from a quicker perspective. But if you've got somebody that only has potentially 3 hours a week in their week to exercise, if we maximize those 3 hours a week, and the reality is if they're not in the gym 6 or 7 times a week, getting life-changing results in 8 to 12 weeks probably isn't as feasible in regards to kind of how much time they have, which is fine. So we just extend that period out to 6 months, 9 months, and work very much with that sort of management of expectations of what because people very quite often overestimate what they can do versus what they typically are going to be giving up. So for me, it's finding, right, how much time does somebody have? And then from a progression standpoint and from a result standpoint, set a timeline. So right, this first 6 to 8 weeks, we're going to work on this. Then they free up more time so we can put a little bit more training in. Or as a coach, it might be, right, the kids are on half term at the moment, so 6 weeks holidays. Parents' time around work is significantly less. So it's setting a plan for these next 6 weeks, taking into account people may be going on holiday with the family. People have got to spend a lot more time around the children. So make a plan that fits them. And it's being realistic with what you have, because as I've said to you earlier on, a lot of people overestimate what they can do versus what they can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's important that people are okay with that. It's okay to train 2 or 3 times a week. We can still get great results where you're losing 1 kilo to 2 kilos a week and losing 1% of body fat, just training 2 to 3 hours a week. But that comes in with water intake, nutrition, and making the right decisions external to those gym sessions. So now I always use the phrase, and it's such a used phrase in the industry for so many years, is you can't out-train a bad diet. And for me, that rings true. There has to be a certain amount of training to elicit progression, but everything's not about training. As you said earlier, it's just a very small cog in a very big wheel. And secondly, when we look at stress, your body doesn't have the ability to decipher whether you're shouting at me right now or I'm being chased by a lion, or for instance, training is an acute stressor. So your body's stress response will react exactly the same no matter what sort of stress it's put on: children, life, training, work. So if somebody overestimates or guesstimates what it is they can do, and they wake up in the morning thinking, oh my God, I've got to train, what do you think that's doing internally? It's creating a stress response the same as being chased by a lion. So by setting over optimistic expectations, it reinforces stress from a stress perspective, the exacerbation of that stress response. So people then, to give you your listeners context, we have 2 things in your central nervous system: your sympathetic nervous system, your fight and flight mode, or your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest mode, where your body recovers and makes progression. We should spend an 80-20 balance in regards to parasympathetic to sympathetic. But in today's society, with money stress, with family stress, with time stress, with work stress, with all the kind of allostatic load that's being created in life, people's balance is readdressing, where they're getting more, essentially more sympathetic. So you've seen that 20% rise up to 30, 40, 50, sometimes even 60 in some cases with the amount of stress. So for me, it's looking after the stress is a big important factor, which I'm sure you've spoken to all your listeners about quite a number of times. but we can manage stress internally from a kind of pressure perspective when it comes to just training by setting realistic expectations and a realistic plan in regards to what actually they have available. So for me, with my clients, I get them to write down, what does your Monday to Sunday look like? What is a typical Monday to Sunday, what it looks like? And then what would your ideal Monday to Sunday look like in regards to kind of, oh, well, this is what my week looks like. I don't feel I spend enough time with the kids. Cool. So I would take the time to build in. Right. We're not going to the gym in that hour and a half you've got free. We might, as I said, take the kids out, watch a movie, switch off early. So kind of what we're trying to do is not just create the best training program, because we know that's subjective and that's not possible. There is no best training program. There is no kind of, you see on Instagram, these people promoting, oh, this is what it's going to do for you. That is so subjective to the individual, not taking into account genotype, environment, and those sort of things. So for me, it's managing stress, it's stress management. And it's, again, setting realistic goals in regards to what somebody is capable of right now. And key to being a coach is that's going to change on a weekly and monthly basis. So we have to be analyzing this through our check-ins, through our time with our clients so frequently to know that if we have got a few weeks where we can push on a little bit, we maximize that window.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it is building consistency, but it's staying flexible with that consistency depending on what the client themselves has available.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Yeah, I can echo that. Like, so with me, when I'm setting up a client, I'm starting to work with a client, I'm getting to know that client. I have something called a startup call, which I've taken a lot of information from that client, that individual, got a good idea of what's going on from week to week and how their lifestyle is structured and with their stresses. That call could be up to an hour long sometimes, a little bit more if it needs to be. And the last thing I'm talking to that individual, 99% of the time, is exercise training of whatever format that's going to look. The bulk of that conversation is sleep and sleep quality.
Yeah.
And as you said, managing those stresses. So can we come away from social media a little bit more, particularly that last hour before bed? Can we be less connected with the news in the mornings, trying to bring those stresses down? And as I say, the last thing on the agenda of that call is exercise. And really, as a coach, if I'm totally honest with you, I probably don't really want to talk about it. I don't, and that is, I think, where people can go wrong at the start of any journey.
Yeah. I also always say to clients, and this probably goes against the grain as selling kind of coaching. I say the least important part of what I'm going to implement in your life is going to be the training. So I always use the iceberg analogy, if you've seen it, where you all the different components that make perfection in all different industries. But I say training's right at the top. It's the tip of the iceberg. It's the least important thing. And as a coach, like selling coaching, kind of, because that's that's people's expectations. You're going to come in, hand them their ass in the gym and they're going to make great results. But I always say training is the least important component. You mentioned a few there: sleep, stress, digestion, lifestyle, again, emotional state, kind of all the external and intrinsic factors that make people tick are all far more important than the training. The training is just the sprinkle of ice in a ready-made cake, essentially. But all the ingredients for the cake come from all the factors below. And when we talk about longevity, when we talk about outstanding results that, again, you see myself achieve, it's very much down to everything else. Like the training, as you said, is the least important part. And I've always says with clients, like, it's kind of so important that all the other markers and all the other kind of biofeedback that we look for is addressed, because the body can only perform when it's in a great position. Again, as you've probably already heard from us, I love an analogy. If you've got a diesel car, it's like, if you're not nourishing your body, it's like going to the petrol station and putting potatoes or petrol into your engine. It's going to run, it's going to get off a forecourt, but it's going to get 200 yards down the road, it's going to choke and it's going to cut out. That's your body, but your body is a lot more intuitive than a car in regards to people can get through most of their life eating shit and still performing. But what I say to clients is, imagine how you'd feel if you was working on super diesel. Imagine if you was working on the actual highest type of diesel your car can perform, and how different it feels like. And I think once people start to experience change and experience what it feels, their new normal, what it feels like to feel like they've got energy, they're not tired, they just feel like they're bouncing off the walls without any 5 cups of coffee in the morning. They're able to decipher between what real kind of energy looks like and how they've lived their life so suppressed, and why there is times where moods off, emotions are all over the place, they're depressed, they're anxious. Because again, the body is a finely tuned being that kind of requires fueling. And when I like clients to have a period where they're actually on it and they're kind of feeling the positive effects of actual normal energy production. And I like them to have a weekend where they're kind of a little bit kind of old person, where they go out, they might have a heavy weekend on alcohol, it might be a birthday, holiday, they eat quite a lot of beige food during the day. And the first thing I ask them is, how do you feel? They're like, oh, I'm tired, I'm lethargic. And I always say to them, that's how you felt every single day, but you still performed. So now that you're actually better, now actually you felt the difference between what your normal is versus the old normal, which one do you want to go back to? And so many processors nowadays, they'll diet for 12 weeks and they'll go back to eating their old normal, and they pile the weight back on. But most importantly, from an energy and a mental capacity standpoint, that's all. I had a heavier day yesterday, and kind of obviously after taking my son out for his birthday, I ate a few foods that I probably shouldn't, and I felt it in the morning. I felt it this morning getting up for my clients at 5 o'clock. I'm able to decipher what a suboptimal Dan feels like to an actual optimal Dan. And a lot of people listening to this, well, unless they are your clients, won't have understood what feeling optimal feels like. And that seems quite hippie in its saying, but trust me, you notice the difference in every aspect of your life if you're working in an optimal capacity. And it's not living like a bodybuilder, it's not eating chicken, rice and broccoli from a Tupperware. It is just optimizing what you have available to you as an individual, and not following and booking all the trends that have become popular on social media in regards to kind of what people say you should be doing to be optimal. It's optimal is very subjective to the individual.
Absolutely. It's changing that base, that new base level that they're now used to. And because it's been like that for so long, that's where they're operating at, you know. And I'm not saying that I know everything and I'm better than everybody, but having that initial, bringing in that initial awareness of like, do you really know how you're feeling at the moment? Because how often do we ask ourselves that? We don't. But then allowing people to, feel that and see that, like you said, with go out, have something nice to eat, enjoy yourself, have a few drinks. And then they can have that reality check of, oh my God, this is how I used to feel all the time. It's really, really empowering for people. And really driving for them, because like, well, I don't want that again. I don't want to go back there. That's, but we almost need that to kick people out of that new base level that they've been operating at for so long, I
just call it the old normal, new normal analogy in regards to people's new normal is making the right choice. It is, but it's being able to collectively make that choice. And that's what I say to everybody. I'm not a dictator. I don't coach people and say, you must do this. I like people to find their own way, because that's the only thing that creates authentic change, is when people do it their own way. It becomes kind of an understanding, and people kind of can make their own decisions, because the reality is most of our clients are adults. So I'm not telling them how to live their life. I'm just suggesting something different and allowing them to find their new normal, which is so important, because so many people find a normal for a period of time and set a goal of 12 to 18 weeks, achieve the results, then go back to living their old normal. But unfortunately, that's what got them into the place that they needed help in the first place. 100%. And it just comes down to accountability and just having somebody at your side that will educate you, support you, and most importantly, kind of have your best interests at heart without being you. I speak to quite a lot of trainers, you must do this, and it becomes a dictatorship when, let's face it, as human beings, none of us like to be told what to do, right? We don't like to be told what we can and can't do. So it becomes more of a conversational relationship. As opposed to kind of me saying, you must do this. You're an adult, you can make the right choices, but if you make the wrong choices in congruence to your goal, let's talk about it and how you maybe act different, put in that scenario again. And it's not saying, oh, you failed this week. There's no such thing as failure.
No.
We know that in life. There's only lessons, and the quicker you can become kind of astute to making better decisions when put under pressure, again, the quicker your results are going to be, and most importantly, the better the results are going to be.
That's awesome, mate. Yeah, and I think you're handing the reins over, aren't you? You know, here you go. It's yours. It's yours to grow with. And again, that is so strong and supportive for people to hear. You know, that it's not a dictatorship, as you say. We're handing the reins over. Here's the knowledge. Here's the support. Here's the accountability. But at the end of the day, you are the one that's going to go and implement and make those decisions.
Yeah, because you look at it in a week's perspective, like there's 168 hours in a week. You spend 2 or 3 of those hours of your week with me. I said this to the client that's literally just left at my gym a second ago, is the results that you want aren't going to happen in the 2 to 3 hours that you're with me. They're going to happen over 165 to 66 hours that you're away from me. So all I can do in these 2 or 3 hours is educate and empower you with the knowledge to make the right decisions, because I can't hold your hand and navigate the whole of the rest of the week. You've got to make those decisions. So you only spend what I think it works out at kind of less than 1% of your week with me. So expecting changes in that 1% is very optimistic. So all I can do is educate and empower you on how to make the right navigation and decisions in the other 166 hours you spend away from me.
100%. Okay, Dan, love all of that. Now, let's take this a step further now. Let's say we have addressed things such as all the things we've been talking about. Stress, management of that. We certainly haven't taken stress away. That's not the idea. There's always going to be stresses, but we're starting to manage it better. Overwhelm is starting to be managed better. Sleep is managed better. We've freed up time through getting rid of the stuff that's just not supporting us. We're hydrated. We are now eating better. We're making positive choices with our nutrition. What now does the training aspect, the training cog, if that's what you want to call it, aspect to all of this start to look like? What have we got to be aware about if we're at that point now and we want to start to implement something that we regard as training? What does that start to look like?
Again, it's subjective to the individual. So for me, kind of the most important thing is people need to be aerobically fit. There's so many kind of trainers nowadays that promote resistance training is the single most important thing for strength and stability. But in order to facilitate you working hard in a resistance program, you need some level of cardiovascular fitness. We know with what's happened in the world over the last couple of years, people have got a lot more sedentary. So a lot more people work from home. A lot more people complete a lot less steps. So the first focus is to kind of improve your CO2 tolerance and kind of improve your aerobic capacity. So getting out for walks, setting a step goal, kind of getting in to do a couple of bouts of cardio a week, albeit if you get an exercise bike at home or you get into the gym. Then accompanying that is setting a consistent exercise program. And it's not buying into this myth where, again, I'm going to speak very much from a male perspective, but a lot of males nowadays think you have to train chest on a Monday, back on a Tuesday. For me, I work off more of a frequency modeling. Body part typically after being trained will recover in circa 48 to 72 hours. So frequency is important. So training different body parts every day. The gap between training them again, if you train chest on a Monday, is 168 hours, which we know is going to be recovered in 48. So for me, it's probably starting 3 to 4 resistance sessions a week, which kind of allows you to train multiple body parts a couple of times. From a stimulus perspective, we can increase intensity and volume by pairing those exercises together and working an upper body with a lower body, of anterior body part with a posterior body part, so in a superset form, but frequent stimulation of your central nervous system through movement and exercise alongside a carefully planned kind of cardiovascular program. And then if required from a stress response, kind of meditation, kind of yoga, mindset, kind of from a holistic view, if you have a sauna available to you at the gym to manage that stress. I think something that kind of ticks all bases, and not just looking at I need to go in the gym and lift as much as possible and work as hard as possible, because as I said, everything from a training aspect, the same as your life, needs to be progressive. You can't, having not trained for a long period of time, just go into the gym and absolutely smash a session, because what's going to happen? going to build up lactic acid and recover. You're going to be aching for 3 or 4 days. A lot of people buy into the fact that, oh, I'm not aching, so I haven't had a good workout. That's, again, just been disproven in science for long periods of time. You aching isn't a sign of a good workout. I always say within my training realm is kind of, there's no such thing as overtraining. The only factor is under recovery. And that's the thing that I find is frequent stimulus when you're monitoring the biofeedback of recovery is super important. So if you ache the day after, don't force yourself to go in, do some stretching, go for a swim, do a little bit of yoga to kind of break down a little bit of the lactic acid that's been built up. So to begin with, if you wanted a sample training program, a couple of cardio sessions a week, maybe 1 yoga and then 3 to 4 resistance, and that's optimal. As I said to you previously in the conversation, that might not be feasible for a lot of people, which is fine. So of those 3 aspects, which one do we need to sacrifice at a certain time? And it might be getting 2 resistance training sessions and then 1 cardio session, and it might not be no yoga. But kind of, as I said, if we can structure your diary around what the person that we're creating a plan for has available to them, we can make it a little bit more specific.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've got clients at the moment, Dan, and, I'll share this with you, to suggest to them that they need to go to a gym environment is just nowhere near as supportive for them or anybody. It's going to fill them with dread. It's going to fill them with overwhelm and stress more than what they're already coping with at the moment. And I've found that for many of them, it's such as, can we get out for a walk in the morning? Can we get some natural light into the eyes? Can we just be in and around nature? And can we just elevate the heart rate just slightly in the mornings? And that's enough. And then that next step may literally be, if they're working from home, 20 minutes, 15 minutes of them going through 4 or 5 different movements that is specific to the individual. Let's get that clear. We're not setting them something that is completely outlandish and we're expecting them to do.
Yeah.
Because I know as a coach, if I can get them to do that and they feel good from it, that's the most important thing for me. They feel good for doing that 20 minutes of 5 or 6 movements in the house.
Yeah.
There's more likelihood that 20 minutes at some point is going to change to 40 minutes naturally because they feel they can, or even 30 minutes. And that set them on that journey to where they want to get to. But it's a way in. It's finding that point for that individual where they can latch onto it and go, I can do that. And then progressing from there. That's where I think a lot of the magic.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think you hit the nail on the head there with everything that you write has to be progressive. Because taking somebody that's never previously trained, never done yoga or any of those things, kind of to the most important thing I always say with my clients is to see results. If I'm asking someone to spend 6 hours in the gym and they don't see any results in the first 6 weeks, what is going to be the pull for them to stay in the gym? So for me, initially, the first 2 or 3 weeks is to try and get at least 8 pounds out of, for instance, a fat loss client. Is to get 6 to 8 pounds out of them in the first three weeks. And that is doing absolutely minimal. Look, it's just working around mindset, kind of nutrition and habits. And what I call my top 5 in regards to actions that they can consistently repeat every single day. And that's a start. And you, lo and behold, a lot of subcutaneous water inflammation comes out, and that's 6 to 8 pounds lost. So the buy-in for a client is going to be much more when they see results of the things you're asking them to do. But most importantly, a lot of coaches nowadays start people so far forward in the exercise continuum that it's very hard to regress and it's very unsustainable. So for me, in my business, I work in a less is more approach. I start with as you will have heard us said at M10, the lowest hanging fruit, and then build from there. And if that is just 2 walks a week and no training to begin with, get more water, then that's where we have to start. But there is progressional steps to it. Whereas if I told you could just go for 1 walk a week, just take on 2 litres of water and you lose 3 pounds on the scales from Monday to Monday, would you not be happy with that? So again, it's all the variables that you mentioned are so important in regards to the progressive nature of anything we impart from a training perspective. But it's making sure that we are getting results and we're explaining in every roadblock, every turn, why we're doing this to client. Because I find with clients, like a lot of coaches just tell them what to do, but lack of understanding is a killer of results. I'm very big on kind of answering every single question a client has and explaining in intimate detail exactly why I'm asking them to do this and what's next, because that leads to excitement. It leads to people looking forward to the next phase of the program, and this is what we're going to do. But they're also seeing composition changes and everything's progressive. So yeah, understanding, explanation and progression, I think, are the big main three factors that we want to be looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, again, you're handing those reins over, aren't you, to the individual, and empowering them at the same time.
Yeah.
Once they have got that nailed down in terms of they're becoming consistent with things, and they're let's say they are in the gym and they're feeling good in that environment, which, to be honest with you, mate, big gyms nowadays, those big corporate gyms, they're very big, lots of equipment in there, can be very off-putting for many people. But let's say they're at that point, they're feeling pretty strong now. What are the little incrementations that people can, just take away from this conversation, that they can walk away from the gym going, that's fun. That wasn't a perfect training session, if there is anything of the sorts. But what do they need to come away from knowing that, yes, I've done well from that training session. I've done well from that.
Just being there, I think, getting to the gym and getting things done. Celebrate that as a win. Just getting to the gym for a lot of people in the busy life we have is a win. But I think the second thing, if it was to go a little bit deeper than that, would be kind of micro progressions. Yeah. So I'm a big believer in stability, especially if someone's a little bit more nervous around a gym environment. Don't walk into the dumbbell section and do all these sexy dumbbell exercises that you've seen on social media. Don't go and pick up a barbell and try to put it over your head and squat it. Stick with the machines, single joint movements. So that we've got demonstrations now on the machines, or kind of ask a member of staff how you use this piece of kit, and stay in relative stability where you can control the movement without any external load having any impact. And just as I said to you, just the fact that you're there and the fact that you're kind of stable and you go through it and making micro progressions. So for me, progressions is two-pronged. It could be weight. It might be doing 1 rep extra than you did on that machine for the same weight last week. But what a lot of people are, we are as human beings, we're very self-critical, and we don't look at the kind of, as I said, in every perceived negative, there's always 1% of positive. And if you've got 1 more rep this week than you did last week, you've added an extra pin down on the leg press machine this week, and you've got 8 reps instead of 10 reps. It's looking for the wins and celebrating the wins, and remembering just turning up is a massive part of the game. If you don't turn up, you don't succeed. And just getting there and kind of ticking the things that you set for your clients in regards to weekly tasks and kind of the check-ins, and kind of, like I say, with my top 5 and stuff, just them completing that every day as a win. You've succeeded, you've won the day. And it's trying not to hyper focus on, yes, be excited about the future, but the only thing within our realm of control as human beings is we can't control what's happened in the past and what we've done previously. We can predict, but we certainly can't control the future. All we can do is, today's Monday, right? So I can just do everything necessary to make sure that I smash Monday out of the park. I can't worry about tomorrow, Wednesday, what I've got on, literally. So owning the day is the important thing. But from a training perspective, just making those micro progressions and celebrating your wins, no matter how small they will be, is going to be super important.
Absolutely, yeah, love that, mate. I think what's that saying? Is it we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality?
Yeah, 100%.
Something like that.
Yeah. And we do. The reality is, people worry about so many things that haven't even happened yet because they're trying to predict the future. But if they're going to happen, they're going to happen anyway. So worrying now about what's going to happen 3 months down the line, like it's wasted energy. And we know negative and kind of bad emotions are so heavy to carry compared to positivity and energy. Kind of, they are light emotions, but any negative or worry or anxiety around stuff that's yet to happen, we do have a certain element of control, but kind of we spend so much time worrying about them that they might never happen. They might never come to fruition. And if you own Monday, the chances of the things that you're worrying about happening on a Thursday kind of lessen, just simply because you're owning your day. And there's a lot of time between today and the thing that you're worrying about 2 or 3 months down the line.
100%. Awesome, Dan. Listen, I could speak with you all day on this because it's what we do. It's what we love to do. We love to empower people, support people to grow. But there's so much in that conversation, and I appreciate all of those nuggets of gold, I call them.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, Dan, to learn more about what you do and how you can help people?
The two probably easiest things, it will be email and Instagram. So as today's title rules, so my email address is just mentor, mentor at dansmithcoach.co.uk. And then my Instagram handle is dansmith_coach. And you'll see a lot about me and kind of what I do, client testimonials, transformations. But if, again, from this podcast, I always like to say when I do go on to anybody's podcast, if anybody has any questions or wants me to elaborate a little bit more, any of your listeners want to kind of talk to me a little bit more about the points that I've mentioned today and how to get started, then just drop me an email or, again, drop me a follow on Instagram and just drop me a message and I'll be sure to get back to them. Awesome.
Love that, Dan. I do hope it's not going to be the only conversation we have on the podcast. I'd love to have you back on. So powerful. So thanks again, and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, John. It's a pleasure. I'll speak to you soon, buddy.